Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. This is Borys Tizengauzen. Today is the 31st of August. Lots of important news. This issue features a big scandal between Russia and Iran, and Russian propagandists are already directly threatening Azerbaijan with war. Well, Donald Trump is scaring the world with a QAnon-style message. What is really behind this signal? We'll talk about that in today's episode. Once again, China has rejected Putin's requests. Meanwhile, the Kremlin has admitted the failure of its policy in Moldova. Heads are rolling in the FSB among those responsible for this direction. All this and more, there's a lot of interesting stuff in today's episode. So if this is your first time on this channel, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. So the conflict between Russia and Iran is escalating. Recently, just the other day, the following happened. Syed Mohammed Sadr, a member of Iran's Expediency Discernment Council, stated, just think about this is an official statement, that Russia, in June 2025, during the 12-day standoff with Israel, actually provided Tel Aviv with information about the locations of Iranian air defense systems. And the Iranian politician stated that such an action by Russia, naturally, means that there can be no talk of any alliance, let alone a strategic partnership. By the way, before this, there were already complaints in Iran, that Russia did not stand up for Iran at all during this 12-day war. The only thing Putin said was that these were unprovoked strikes on Iran by Israel and the US. Well, yes, of course, unprovoked. So Iran, which was developing nuclear weapons and always stated officially that the first nuclear bomb would be aimed at Israel, in other words, their state policy is to destroy Israel, and that's it. Of course, they were anything but unprovoked, obviously. Israel was supposed to wait until Iran developed nuclear weapons and only then do something about it, right? When the nuclear weapons are already on their way toward Israel. And this conflict between Iran and Russia wasn't made public. Although a bit later, there will be another reproach from Iran, this time financial. Well, that's typical for Russia. So the Russian media don't publicize the conflict, but do you know what they do in the public information space? Through the mouth of their top propagandist Solovyov, they threaten Azerbaijan with a joint special military operation together with Iran. Supposedly, they could carry out this special military operation against Azerbaijan. Can you imagine that? In other words, they are openly threatening Azerbaijan with war. Take a look at this video.
Did you think that Russia is weak? Will you be very surprised if Azerbaijan thinks that Turkey is backing it and decides to try to fight for their bent? Well, for now, what is happening in our soft underbelly could serve as grounds and appears to be a reason for conducting a joint special military operation with Iran against unfriendly influence.
I can assure you that propagandists of Solovyov's level do not voice such statements without approval from the Kremlin. He is in fact now openly threatening war. And it's not just him. Suddenly, all propagandists, whether of major, medium or minor caliber, have started spreading all sorts of nasty things about Azerbaijan and threatening them. Here's another Russian propagandist voicing the claim that Azerbaijan is in fact a fabricated state. They have no history or culture at all. And in general, they should be kissing Russians' hands for the fact that Russia even allowed them to exist. Just take a look at this.
What's my point? Azerbaijan has never truly possessed any genuine statehood, established traditions, or even its own distinct and verifiable history, not even an invented one that could be claimed. It seems to me that, unfortunately, this is a very sad mistake made by a person who fundamentally misjudged both his own place in history and, so to speak, his country's place in the geopolitical landscape. A country that appeared on the map and exists on the map, but forgive me, is largely there thanks to Russia.
It seems that threatening everyone is some kind of built-in feature that Russians are born with. I don't think any other nation talks about a bloody war it went through, a war that claimed millions and millions of lives the way they do. No other nation, well, at least as far as I know, says, we can do it again. And that's exactly how Russians constantly talk about World War II. We can do it again. But you are already repeating it. Only this time, you are on Hitler's side. What Hitler did, you are repeating point by point exactly. Just as Hitler once annexed the Sudetenland, Putin annexed Crimea. And before the invasion of Poland on September 1st, 1939, Hitler and Nazi propaganda spread false claims that Poland was preparing to attack Germany. And in order to justify their invasion, they accused Poland of aggression and of persecuting ethnic Germans. In exactly the same way, Russian propaganda claims that Ukraine was preparing to attack Russia, that Russian speakers in Donbass need to be saved. There is a complete 100% match in methods and tactics. It really feels like Putin just found Hitler's playbook somewhere and is following it step by step. Well, I hope that the Kremlin's strongman meets the same end as Hitler. That is, he'll take himself out in a bunker, or all of them will, these replicants, doubles, however many of them there are. By the way, there's another situation with Iran that I mentioned. It's bad for Iran, but very typical for Russians. By the way, I don't feel sorry for anyone here. In this squabble, as they say, I'm rooting for both sides to tear each other's throats out. A very typical situation. The Russians have also cheated Iran out of money. They received drone manufacturing technology from Iran, everyone knows this, and in return they were supposed to supply weapons and aeronautical navigation technologies. Basically, they copied the drone technology, localized production in Alabuga, expanded it, replaced the components with Chinese ones, and are in no hurry to fulfill their obligations to Iran. Forbes writes about this. From Russia's unfulfilled promises to supply such defense systems as the S-400 and Su-35 to repeated delays in military cooperation, all of this indicates that this partnership is not based on mutual trust, but rather on opportunistic short-term interests, as was noted with regret in the editorial article. These are reports from Iranian media and also Western intelligence officials, whom CNN, among others, sites have described the cooperation between Russia and Iran as situational, utilitarian, and so on. Well, what did you expect? That's business Russian style. They got the technology but left them hanging when it came to the money. As the saying goes, life is tough without a sucker. By the way, yesterday marked a very interesting anniversary. 107 years ago, Fanny Kaplan, her real name was Feiga Kaimovna Roitblatt, attempted to assassinate Lenin. Unfortunately, it was unsuccessful, but that's just my point of view. I mean, I think history could have turned out completely differently, and there wouldn't have been, well, obviously there wouldn't have been Lenin, no Stalin, no Soviet Union, no totalitarian regime, no gulags, none of it. Although, who knows? Who really knows? So, if someone had aimed a little better back then, maybe none of this would have happened at all. And no one who knows how the fate of dozens and dozens of peoples would have turned out. Yeah, exactly. Why do I say someone and not Fanny Kaplan? Well, because I don't really believe she was the one who shot him. When I looked into these records, you know, after another failed assassination attempt and after hard labor, she was practically blind. That is, well, she could hardly see anything at all. There are also testimonies from doctors which SRs would trust her with a pistol so she could shoot at Lenin? I don't know. By the way, she was born in the village of Novichi. That's in the Shepetivka district of the Khmelnytsky region of Ukraine. By the way, I remember as a child there was a version that Lenin was so humane that he forbade her execution, put her in prison so she could reflect on her actions. In reality, she was executed 4 days later after harsh interrogations. And here's the testimony. Under the cover of running car engines, the order was carried out by the Kremlin commandant, former Baltic sailor Malkov, in the presence of the poet Demyan Bedny. I don't know why Demyan Bedny, that proletarian poet, was invited to witness this execution, because afterwards Fanny Kaplan's body was stuffed into a barrel, doused with gasoline and burned by the Kremlin walls. They did this to prevent the creation of any kind of grave, because such a grave could have become a place of pilgrimage, a symbol of some kind of resistance. Well, and Demyan Bedny, after smelling the burning body, fainted. This is from memoirs, so in short, she died by firing squad, and her remains were destroyed, leaving no trace. She actually had an extremely interesting biography. Here are just a couple of paragraphs about how she lost her sight. In 1906, she was preparing an assassination attempt on Governor General Sukhomlinov, the one in Kiev. She was preparing it in Kiev. And together with her lover, whose last name was Garsky, in a room at the Kupecheskaya Hotel, Voloshskaya 29, that's in Podil, they were preparing this explosive device. As a result of careless handling, there was an explosion. Kaplan was wounded in the head, partially lost her sight, and later would almost completely lose her hearing. And of course, she couldn't leave. She was disoriented. and her lover, Garsky, escaped, ran away, leaving her there. So the police report, no fixed occupation, no personal property, had 1 ruble on her. That's how they described her. In 1907 she was sentenced to death, but because she was still a minor, the sentence was commuted to life at hard labor. Well, she served 10 years at hard labor, and there she almost completely lost her sight. Later she was amnestied by Kerensky. In general, the attempt on Lenin's life became the pretext for the Red Terror. They executed everyone, the intelligentsia, the clergy, basically everyone. All the so-called bourgeois elements in their view were shot. So that's how it was. By the way, the Kiev Governor General Sukhomlinov, whom she didn't manage to blow up, the explosive device went off in Kiev, but the Governor General survived. After the revolution, he fled to Finland and then escaped to Germany. In exile, the Governor General, still alive, made a living from literature in Kiev, but his writing was very mediocre. His earnings were only enough for a very, very modest existence. And in general, his wife, the Governor General's wife, was arrested for speculation in 1920. That is, she was selling off some family valuables or exchanging some money. So she was arrested in 1920 and executed in 1921. Such was her fate. By the way, friends, let me remind you that we have an important fundraiser going on. We do not forget about our defenders, about our soldiers. Our help is very much needed by them right now, so this fundraiser is for one of the largest brigades. The separate presidential brigade named after Bohdan Khmelnytsky. Right now they are probably on the hottest front in Pokrovsky. And I know we've done this together more than once. We've completed fundraisers together. Let's close this one as well. Our soldiers really need ATVs so they can quickly arrive, do everything necessary and leave, launch what needs to be launched so that all this evil that has come to our land doesn't advance any further. That's why I'm asking you to support this fundraiser. The link to the fundraiser is in the comments, and the link is also in the description of this video. If you're not watching on my channel, there's a QR code right here that you can use to go to the fundraiser. And in the payment details, there's private, there's mono, and there's PayPal for those who want to help our defenders of Ukraine from abroad. I see everyone, and I always say a huge thank you to all of you. You are simply the best. Donald Trump posted an image generated by artificial intelligence on his social network. Trump is in it. Let me show it to you now. So Trump is standing in this pose, and behind him is a planet, which for some reason is engulfed in flames. At this point, I already started to get a bit tense. And of course, there's a caption like the world will soon understand that nothing will be able to stop what is coming, what is approaching, what is on its way. So from Donald Trump, we get this image, the earth on fire, and it sounds extremely frightening. The image is clearly styled to convey an apocalyptic or some kind of revolutionary message. But also, notice here, there's the letter Q. That's the symbol of the QAnon movement. And that's where I got even more concerned. Well, I'll tell you about it now, and you'll probably get a bit concerned too. But since this is calm analysis, you'll only be moderately concerned. So, QAnon is a conspiracy theory widespread in the US, as well as a political movement among American far-right groups which emerged during Donald Trump's first presidency. It grew out of another conspiracy movement called Pizzagate. In general, QAnon followers are convinced that the United States, or even the entire world, is controlled by a secret and powerful organization of Satanist pedophiles, which includes leaders of the Democratic Party, businessmen, Hollywood actors, royal families, and other celebrities. This organization supposedly supports a massive international scheme of child exploitation and has existed for a long time. And Trump is considered the central positive hero of QAnon. QAnon supporters expect him to take decisive action in the near future, mass purges, arrests, and even executions of thousands and thousands of members of this conspiracy. Well, you know, if a kind wizard had published "Nothing can stop what is coming," I would think it's something good, but this is Donald Trump, so that's how it is. By the way, the emergence of the QAnon movement is quite interesting. You see, there are currently many different movements in the world, and people who believe in conspiracies about reptilians or someone else, that the world is really ruled by all sorts of reptiles, aliens, extraterrestrials, and so on. So in October 2017, messages began to appear in one of the chats that would give rise to the QAnon theory. The author of these messages is an anonymous user under the nickname Q, and in his posts, he hints that he is part of Donald Trump's inner circle and has access to state secrets. And the general idea of the posts was that Trump supposedly plans to expose this secret international organization. And in general, the struggle is proving to be very difficult. Trump is opposed by the elite who will do anything to stop him. All these contradictory episodes in Trump's administration, the scandalous firings of some of his supporters, this is all part of the plan. It's the elite undermining. See how clever it is. Any kind of screw-up means the secret elite is sabotaging Trump's team. Well, then why aren't there any investigations? Why isn't there any, evidence? Because the elite controls all the media. And that includes the Republicans, the Republican media too, apparently. So that's how it is. And this Q called his posts breadcrumbs. That's just a small part, just the tip of the iceberg. And you see, it's too early to reveal the whole truth, otherwise the elite will catch, tie up, and destroy everyone. Basically, the audience of those who believed this Q started to grow at a crazy rate, almost exponentially. People, as they say, don't need breadcrumbs. Give them a new conspiracy theory. By that time, this whole Pizzagate thing had already lost some steam. That story, that conspiracy theory. And so all the flat earthers, anti-COVID folks, they all joined the QAnon movement. By the way, it didn't bother the conspiracy theorists at all that none of the predictions made by this Q, like, I have access to sites, I'll get the info and reveal it, ever came true. Not a single one of the predictions came true. So when this Q stopped posting messages, his followers started finding these Easter eggs themselves. Like in video games or movies, they began to find clues on their own. You see what I mean? So a vivid imagination, belief in conspiracy theories, and voila, any little detail and that's it. So why is he wearing the wrong color here? That means it's some kind of hint. And here's a classic example. For instance, there were people who saw Donald Trump's speech about the pandemic and noticed that he was wearing a yellow tie. And they saw this as a secret signal that the coronavirus was not a real threat. Why? How is a yellow tie connected to a fake threat, you might ask? Because a yellow maritime flag signals that there are no infected people on board the ship. So that's how they made the connection. Well, you get it, right? Just look at how far this has gone. I mean, you could interpret the yellow tie any way you wanted. But there you have it. And so QAnon really became a universal conspiracy theory. Everyone who truly believed in other theories suddenly started to join this one as well. Well, not everyone, but some of them. By the way, do you remember that famous photo from the Capitol, the man in furs and a helmet with horns? That's the Q shaman, also a fervent supporter of the QAnon theory. His name is Jake Angeli, and he said that he believes not only in QAnon, but also in the Illuminati, and that the world is ruled by reptilians. Oh, right, but QAnon, well, hardly anyone even knew about this story, because it's, well, most likely a purely American phenomenon. But as soon as it turned from a conspiracy theory into a real threat, and let me remind you, the FBI included QAnon in the list of domestic threats to US national security. That is, conspiracy theories had never made it onto that list before, and at that point it became clear that QAnon was really turning into a genuine threat. So basically you could say these so-called satanic abusers are sitting in there, let's go storm the building and so on. Well, actually there was another reason for it. But let's say, for example, like this, there's the Democrats' headquarters over there. Let's do something to it. So, in 2018, 30-year-old Matthew Wright blocked a highway in Nevada with an armored vehicle. He had an automatic rifle with him, and he was demanding the release of the investigation report on Hillary Clinton. All of this is connected to QAnon. Show me, where are they? What is it? What kind of cult do they have over there? In reality, this report had been published by the FBI, but the man believed Q, who said that it was a redacted version of the report. Which means that the juiciest parts, the most terrifying facts, had been removed from it. And so Matthew Wright blocked the road. He believed it. So this really became, there were actual cases like this. That is to say, people actually took up arms and wanted to get to the absolute truth as they themselves saw it. By the way, in the United States Congress, there are actually 2 elected representatives who are vocal supporters of, well, who genuinely believe in this QAnon conspiracy theory story. And just try to guess, who is one of them specifically? Our now well-known Marjorie Taylor Greene, yes, and the second is Lauren Boebert. Both of them have said they believe in this theory. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, let me kindly remind you, is the controversial congresswoman who infamously called Azov Nazis and actively tried to stop crucial aid to Ukraine, a nation in dire need. By the way, that's her boyfriend in the Oval Office. How he got in there is unclear, who shouted at Zelensky in the Oval Office, "Why did you come without a suit?" So it's no surprise that Marjorie Taylor Greene ended up among the supporters of such a conspiracy theory. By the way, it's possible maybe that there are some people in the comments who believe in it. I respect everyone's beliefs. You can believe in this theory or in reptilians if you want. I'm just expressing my own point of view. If you have any evidence that things are actually different from what I'm saying, be sure to write about it in the comments. Especially since this episode will also be released on the English language channel. So there's another piece of news that I just couldn't pass it by. This is what I mean. This news really, this shows exactly what the Russian Federation is turning into. I'll just give you 2 paragraphs. A loader named Vadim Selin was sentenced to 18 years in prison under charges of justifying terrorism, participating in a terrorist organization, and spreading fake news about the army. Supposedly, according to the prosecution, he left 25 comments in the chat of the Freedom of Russia movement, LSR, the Legion of Freedom of Russia. And there he supposedly justifies terrorism. Basically, for example, he might have said, guys, share your beliefs. What else was there? Fake news about the army. The Russian army are murderers and occupiers. We came to someone else's land. I understand that, and I'm ashamed of it. That's it. Or maybe offered some kind of help within his means. So the prosecutor asked for 20 years, but he was given 18. In Russia, you get less time for murder than for simply not accepting something. In this case, it's really fair to say that this person does not accept this war, does not support it. 18 years just for not supporting Putin's war. He didn't kill anyone, he didn't rob anyone, he didn't harm anyone. On the contrary, he wanted to avoid causing harm and didn't want to justify it. And for that, he gets 18 years. Just so you understand. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. The more of us there are, the fewer of them. And that helps the channel grow. And you often write in the comments that the streams should be translated into English. As I already mentioned, this month we launched an English language channel to reach a Western audience. And I don't just mean the US, but the entire English-speaking audience. So we're doing that, so there's no need to translate the stream. These episodes in English are released on a separate channel. Auto-dubbing is enabled there. So if you have, for example, an English keyboard layout set and English as your default language, you'll get subtitles in English and accordingly in other languages as well. And I also want to share a little bit of good news. We launched the channel just recently, this month. We've already reached our first 1,000 subscribers there. It's growing pretty quickly. There's even a video that got 35,000 views in the West among the English-speaking audience. It really took off, as we YouTubers say. Honestly, I was very surprised. The channel was absolutely at zero. We literally started it from scratch and launched it. But even on my main channel, I never had something like this happen. So let's hope that we'll keep knocking and eventually get through. Those who need to see it will be shown, so to speak. There's no need for translation anymore. People are already recording. And that's even though in the West, I think very, very few people know me. So we'll keep working. And considering my slight schizoid tendencies, my favorite pastime as a child was to sit and draw pictures in every square of a notebook page. You know, those squared ones. So perseverance is basically my second nature. That's why I think that perseverance, multiplied by a bit of schizoid character, will bear fruit. So the high-heeled 1.5 meter tall conqueror, old Kabaev, met with the leader of China, Xi Jinping. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit is kicking off there in Beijing. All the state leaders have flown in for it. By the way, Lukashenko has also gone there. And I noticed that Putin also arrived looking quite energetic, even bouncing a bit on the airplane stairs. Clearly, they must have sent the banquet version of him. And Aliyev, the president of Azerbaijan, also flew in. Aliyev was greeted with songs and dances no less. Right there on the tarmac, some children were dancing and giving flowers. Putin, on the other hand, got a rather modest welcome. I still don't quite understand why the reception was like that. I think that after this summit, and even during it, we'll hear a lot of new things, especially after the Chinese leader meets with the AliExpress version of Putin. I don't know. Maybe they'll show a closer shot and we'll see what kind of Putin that is. By the way, Putin still can't let go of the idea of pushing his Power of Siberia-2 gas pipeline onto China, but China has already made it clear to Putin that this time they won't even discuss the topic. Maybe we'll increase the flow through the Power of Siberia by 15% and that's it. And as for Power of Siberia-2, you can forget about it. Well, Putin has gotten himself into such a crippling dependence that it's about time for him to crawl there on his knees. By the way, the Kremlin has indirectly admitted the failure of its agents in Moldova, the expulsion of pro-Russian politicians from Moldova, the arrest of some Kremlin mouthpieces. Clearly, this is not what the Kremlin was counting on. That's why the heads of those responsible for the region have rolled. And a high-ranking FSB officer who was responsible for Moldova, Belarus, and the Baltic states has resigned. This is Dmitry Milutin, the deputy head of the 5th Directorate.